25 tells us Edom is from Timan to Dedan. These are biblical cities that are in Arabia.
Hello everyone, Bible believers around the world. We are finally getting started with this new Bible study series. And in this series, we're going to be covering one of the most famous and popular camp doctrines. And that doctrine is the Esau is the white man doctrine. Now this is going to be a very long series because I'm going to be covering a lot of things. I'm going to be going into the scriptures, I'm going to be going into the Hebrew, I'm going to be going into historical timelines, and I'm going to look at ancient depictions on what the Edomites looked like. And then I'm going to compare what the ancient depictions of the Edomites looked like versus what the ancient depictions of the Europeans looked like. And we're going to see if they're the same people. Let's get into this and start at the very beginning. Okay, we're going to start at the very beginning where these camps start. And that is in Genesis chapter 25. Now we're going to start at chapter 25. And we're going to work our way down from verse 23 to 25. And we're going to break down each one of the points that they make from these verses. Now, we see in verse 23, the Lord says that there are two nations in thy womb, and two manner of people shall be separated from thy bowels. One people shall be stronger than the other, and the elder shall serve the younger. Now, let's break down each point they make from this verse. Now, they say the two nations are two different races. They say that the nations represent race. Now, this is automatically false because the whole idea of race was not a thing during the time of the Bible. People were not separated based on skin color or hair texture. They were based on their nationality. Now, the confusing thing about people who use this part in this verse to say that one was white and one was black is we know that the Egyptians were a different nation than the Israelites. We know that the Cushites were a different nation than the Israelites. We know that the Moabites were a different nation than the Israelites, and they were all black. So how does nation mean one white and one black when every nation who's not Israel is not white? So how do you get that one was white based on the two nations? Now, they also try to further their point in saying that they were two different races based on the two manner of people shall be separated from thy bowels. We're going to look into that word manner and see what it means. Is it saying that one is what we would refer to Caucasian and one is the black man of America? Is that really true? Now, going down to verse 25, this is where, they say they hit the nail on the head and it's like, confirmed and all that. They say the first one came out red all over like a hairy garment, and they called his name Esau. So they say, see, he was red. We all know when white people stay out in the sun too long and they turn red, and they're hairy. Who's hairy? Which we're going to look into that right now. We're going to start off with the red and hairy part, and then we're going to go over a look at the two nations and the two manner of people and properly break this down. So the Hebrew word that was translated to red in Genesis chapter 25, verse 25 is admoni. Admoni is a reddish brown color, and admoni is the same word that was used to describe King David's complexion. So does that mean King David was a blushing white man as well? And a lot of people who teach this doctrine do not study the Hebrew, which if you're going to study the Bible, you must understand the Hebrew, because Moses, Jacob, and Abraham and all of the patriarchs spoke Hebrew and they wrote the Bible in Hebrew. So there's going to be issues when you only try and use the English, because a lot, and I mean a lot of words in English do not have the same meaning today as they did back then in Hebrew. I mean, you can look it up for yourself. They change the meaning of words in the English dictionary almost yearly. You can even look back at the 1717 dictionary of English and words will mean something different. For example, a certain word I will not mention that is spelled G-A-Y used to mean happy, but now it means homosexuality. that is a new change, and it's only been a reference to homosexuality for about maybe 5 decades. If you were to use that word in 1921, nobody would think you're talking about homosexuality. They would think you're talking about being happy. Has anyone ever seen the Flintstones? And in the theme song, they say, we'll have a gay old time. See, you can't trust English. But as you can see in the Strongest Concordance, admoni, red, H132, ruddy, H132. And these wicked camps take advantage of the different words being used, even though it's the same word. They take advantage of it because they'll say, see, David was a red white man. They'll say Esau was a red white man and David was a light-skinned black man, just off of one saying red and one saying ruddy, even though it's all ruddy and it's the exact same word, admoni. So Esau was not white. And one thing that's actually funny is when you look into the Hebrew Bible, the word red is not even used. As you can see in the top corner and the right, it uses ruddy, just like David. And we're going to use another source right here called Ancient Black Hebrews and Arabs. It's an old book. So the Ancient Black Hebrews and Arabs, page 26. It should come as no surprise that the original Hebrew word Adam, red, related to Adamah, earth. So presumably, red like earth was not a reference to a pinkish color. It would be more accurate to say reddish brown. This does not support white and ruddy, but supports dark. Exactly. Now, one thing that's going to shock a lot of people in this doctrine is that you can't find a single instance in the scriptures of white skin being referred to as red. White skin was always referred to as being white, or the Hebrew word Laban. When Miriam was turned leprous, white as snow, the word used was Laban, not ruddy red, admoni. When Moses' hand turned white, it was Laban, admoni. And also, when we look into the book of Enoch, like we discovered and talked about in the Fallen Seed series, it described him as being white as snow and red as a rose. It didn't just say red, all right? So this is something very important to understand because all this is about the red. It's all about the red, you know. I've come across people, from the camp who follow the camps, and as somebody who sees the error in this doctrine, they'll come up to me and they'll be like, yeah, the red race. And I'll be like, Native Americans? Because Native Americans are actually ruddy. Native Americans would actually be red according to the scriptures. Red was never sunburnt white people. It was always reddish brown. But they would be referring to white people because of this Esau lie. But now that we know that red is not white, let's look at some other sources outside of the Bible that show us and tell us what the Edomites looked like and see if they are, in fact, sunburnt white people and we got it wrong. I brought this out a few days ago, but this is not going to be the only source that I'm going to use for what the Edomites looked like and the ancient depictions we have of them and their complexion. Because contrary to what the camps would lead you to believe, Esau is not as much as a mystery as they paint him out to be. There's actually quite a bit of ancient depictions and sources about what the Edomites looked like. Let's read this again. It's talking about Herod Antipas. Now we know Herod the Great was an Edomite, and Herod Antipas is the descendant of Herod the Great. And let's see what it has to say about him. It calls him a gross and swarthy creature with flat nostrils and with coarse, black Edomite hair and a heavily oiled beard, dressed in 7 curls. Now we know swarthy refers to a dark complexion. Swarthy never means fair-skinned or white. It never does. And it calls the Edomite swarthy. Herod Antipas, the swarthy Edomite. Let's continue on. Real quick, I'm going to bring out an old coin that I've brought out on this channel before because timing is very important. So Herod the Great was during the time of the Messiah, which in terms of Bible history was more of the modern era. Now Herod Antipas, one of his descendants, came after Herod the Great. Now the Greeks and Romans were conquering much of the world at this time. And during this time period, they were enslaving white people in Europe. The Romans and Greeks were. So at the time that white people are already in Europe being captured from amongst the many different European tribes that were around at the time, the Edomites are still being described as being swarthy. So that is a problem right there. That we already have white people in Europe at the exact same time that Esau is still in Arabia and is still black in complexion. Now we're going to deal with the whole thing that Esau went into Europe and kicked Japheth out and all that other type of stuff. We'll deal with that doctrine where they twist the book of Jasher at a later time. But I just wanted you guys to see that white people were already a thing while the Edomites are still black. That's important to understand. Okay, we're now going to be stopping by a source in a book called The Negro Question. We have two ancient coins here, Archaeoplos the Edomite and Shalom the Edomite. I've placed a coin with the images of the descendants of the kingdom of Edom, page 137. This is what the people of Edom looked like. This is Jacob's twin. These images on these coins are undisputed among archaeologists and by the historians. I've blown up the image of Archaeoplos the Edomite on page 139 as large as possible. Make no mistake about it. The lips, hair, nose, braids, this is a black Edomite, Jacob's twin. Also see the image of Shalom Herod on page 140. She has braids, big lips, and a large Negro nose. Let's move on to another source about the Edomites being black. Before I break down this image, I would just like to apologize for the poor quality of this image. This is the best copy that I was able to obtain. Now, this old painting is from the Catholic Church, the Vatican. And this is a depiction made by the Catholic Church depicting the Edomites going out hunting. You see they got all their hunting gear, their spears, but look at their hair. Look at the black fro, curly like hair. And look at their skin. It's just like what we learned from the Hebrew and from the scriptures. It's that reddish, ruddy brown. It is not blushing, fair-skinned. So now we have a Roman depiction from the Negro Question, and the Edomites are black. We have that old description of Herod Antipas calling him swarthy and flat-nosed. And now we have the Catholic Church depicting the Edomites as black. All of this lines up with the scriptures. Now moving on from the red part of Esau, let's tackle the hairy part real quick. Now in 2 Kings chapter 1 verse 8, we learn that Elijah the prophet was a hairy man. So being hairy is not a white only feature and a way to identify somebody as being European or, in scientific terms, commonly referred to as being Caucasian.